Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Bleakwell Gaming. Today, we're talking Anthem, the open demo. Before we get into it, I just want to remind you, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell to stay up to date with future content and video, and smash that like button if you like what you see, leave a comment below. Hit that dislike button if you don't. Tell me why. I'd love to know. I can always use help improving my, videos, and I want to hear from you. Let's get into it. So last week we had the VIP demo and I was part of that, and if you watch my video you can tell I was really excited about it. Now through the open demo I was able to take a step back, get a little more of a critical eye to it. The hype had died down a bit, so I was able to kind of take a step back and figure out if there's anything I wanted to pick apart, if it actually was as good as I thought it was in the VIP demo, or if there were any issues. And there were definitely issues. I got to play with different friends both times. Luckily, I had friends to play with both times, and this time around I was able to play with somebody who put a bit of perspective in my view. I did come from a long time of console gaming. Not only console gaming, I've been on the computer for a very, very long time, but I've also been gaming on consoles for a very long time. Just recently have I gotten rid of my consoles, so I have kind of that both, that outlook, that view of both sides of things, and sometimes that's good and sometimes it's bad. When I end up judging a game, sometimes I'm lenient for the things they do for a console version that ports over to the PC, and I kind of give them a leeway, a pass, because they chose that route, and it's not necessarily the way it should be. When a game is ported over from a console to the PC, it should have PC specific elements. The menu should be redesigned to cater to the PC. Some of the play elements, some of the way the character reacts, the way the combat system works, all that kind of stuff should be ported for a PC version of it, and a console just it doesn't get that across. So with that said, Anthem does a little bit of that. The biggest problem is their menu, and that's not a bad thing. Like, it's something that's super easy to fix, and maybe they will, maybe they won't. If they do, they'll probably do it later. It's probably not a big thing on their list right now, nor should it be, but that is the number one kind of detractor for me. It was really clunky when I wanted to just look at settings, or when I wanted to leave the game, that kind of stuff. Another thing was the interaction with your character. This is where it starts getting more, it'll affect your gameplay. It didn't do that too bad, but when you move, there's almost like a little bit of input lag, for the lack of a better term right now that I can think of. When you go to move, or you running side to side, that kind of thing, it's not very responsive, where other PC games are pretty much immediate. You push that A and D key and you start moving. Anthem has a bit of that delay. You kind of act a little awkwardly, whereas when you plug in your controller, if you've got a Bluetooth or wireless or wired, whatever, it works much smoother than it does if you're using the keyboard. So what I did find was the combat wasn't affected greatly by this. There were very small things, but overall the combat was still good, so that's always a plus to see. Now, another thing that was kind of a setback was the realization that the game wasn't as open world as I'd hoped it was going to be. I saw it in the first VIP demo, and I forgot to touch base on it, and basically it's very similar to Destiny, and when you go into the open world aspect of it, it's very closed off. There's a lot of loading screens. It's not really open world. True open world is a game that you get to go out, you get to explore it. There's only loading scenes when you get to a dungeon or something like that, but overall it would be an open world. These weren't really like that. There's a lot of loading screen. You go into a cave and you hit a loading screen. You go into an event area, sometimes you hit a loading screen. You know, you want to go from zone to zone, you hit a loading screen. So it was a bit disappointing that way. I was hoping they wouldn't have followed Destiny's tale from that, but they did, and it's a little unfortunate for me. Still not a game breaker by any means. I will still be playing this game when it comes out, and I'm still going to be doing a full review on the full game because the demo was so small. You don't know what else the game has to offer. But based on the demo, there was a lot I was really happy to see and a lot I was really sad to see. I've spoken to people who don't like the combat, and I've spoken to people who do like the combat. I've spoken to people who don't like the flying and are still not so happy that you can't fly the entire time. And you know what? Some of their arguments are warranted, and I, in my last video, I said it didn't bother me that you can't fly, but it actually, getting to play it a second time round where that hype has kind of settled down and I was able, again, like I said, to take a more critical eye, I look at the game and I say, well, you know what, it's kind of true. Why can't I fly? If you're not in combat, why can't you just fly? A good point that I've seen other people talk about is, well, let us fly constantly when we're not in combat, and then when you're in combat, issue that heat timer, you know, that heat sensor where you overheat if you fly for too long. But when you're in that open world, as they call it, there's no reason you shouldn't be able to fly the full time without getting overheated. You know, a lot of people will run into a waterfall to cool off, you know, and that's great that they have those features. It's really cool to see that implemented, but I'd rather see that implemented mid-combat rather than just, again, flying around when you're not in combat and you're just exploring and seeing the world they've created and things like that. That was a bit of a disappointment that I do go back on and say, you know what, it does bother me a little bit that you can't constantly fly. Again, not necessarily in combat, but at least in open combat it would have been nice. Leading from that, where you've got the constant load times, there is a lot of loading and it's pretty disappointing. When you play a game like this, the constant load screen from zone to zone, even when you're in a dungeon and you go to a different zone, it can get tiresome. I get why they might have done some things. For example, when your group gets you know, far away from you, you port to them and you hit that loading screen and then you go nearby. I get it. I'm not the biggest fan. I come from MMOs and it's not the best thing to me. I'm not huge on that idea. I'd prefer to be able to be left behind if they're going to run off without you, because it kind of makes you, you know, wait and work as a team, and then at the same time you get people who abuse that privilege. But overall, if you're doing something or you're, you know, finishing up killing some ads and you just finished a certain area and a chest drops, somebody loots that chest and they fly off, there is potential for you to get ported before being able to pick up those items. So it's not one of the best systems. Again, not a game breaker, but it is something I'm not happy to see the second time around now, again, that I'm able to take a more critical eye to it. The world's still beautiful. Looking at it visually, I can't complain. It's still a gorgeous game in every aspect. The flying to me is still super fun. When you implement it into the combat, it's still super fun, even with not being able to fly, you know, the full distance, as much as I would love that, and you go back on saying that it doesn't bother me 100%. From what you do get to do, it's still a really fun thing to experience. I'm going to be uploading some gameplay and some fun things that I was able to go through, some boss fights, things like that. But this video is just, again, mainly talking about my experience. And it was still a fun one. I had a lot of fun playing with friends. I can see it getting a little boring, but again, there wasn't much story, so I can't speak to the solo aspect of it just yet. But from what I've seen so far, it can get a little boring if you're on your own. But again, that's up to them on what else they have to offer in the game, which we didn't really see much of. Sorry, and with that, we kind of have to kind of take it by ear, and kind of go from there and see what the game offers when it is released. So based off of that, I don't really want to say yay or nay for solo players until I've played the game when it's released and I can have a little bit more to speak to on that front. I do hope in the future they implement some kind of a PvP arena or PvP mode, just because I think it'd be really cool to go up against other players in these javelins. They're super fun to fly, like I said, in combat, and incorporate all of that kind of stuff. But overall, I definitely would like to see them incorporate something. Again, I do not want them to incorporate it if it means it's going to affect the PvE experience of this game. It is a PvE game being launched as one, so I would never want a PvP aspect of it to interfere with that. But I think they could have a really good time and a really good mode on their hands if they initiate this in the future. So I would like to see something eventually come in. What do you guys think so far? Did you participate in the demo? Would you like to see anything added? What were your thoughts on it? I am going again based off the PC version. So did you play on the console? Did you play with a remote, a controller, sorry? Did you play with friends? And did any of them that play on both system or one and the other? Let me know your thoughts so far. So yeah, that's my impression of Anthem so far. Second week around, the hype died down a little. I was able to take, again, a more critical eye towards it, and I still had a good time, but I was definitely able to pick out some things that I wish they improved upon. They definitely have me a little worried with the server issues and the audio issues and all that kind of stuff. Games these days are being released before their major bugs are being fixed. I feel like there's not enough betas going on in a whole, but I'm also going to be doing another video soon talking about the current state of video games and how they're being released and what I don't like about it and what people in general don't like about it. So stay tuned for that. I've got that coming out later this week. And again, that's my thoughts on Anthem so far. Tell me what your thoughts are. I'd love to hear about all of your experiences. I'd like to see what you guys played, if you guys have a favorite javelin, or if you like the game or dislike the game, anything like that. I'd love to hear from all of you. Well, until next time, keep your gaming rated. BG. Bleakwell out.